If you grew up watching the sky, you probably remember the deafening, chest-rattling roar of a fighter jet breaking the sound barrier. It was a sound that felt like absolute, unstoppable power. We were raised with the belief that these technological titans, built with trillions of taxpayer dollars, were the indestructible backbone of the free world. We were taught that the United States Air Force was a machine that never slept. But deep in the American desert, you are confronted with a haunting, chilling paradox. If you look at the baking sands of Tucson, Arizona, you will find a military force large enough to conquer almost any nation on Earth. Over 4,400 aircraft sit perfectly aligned in endless, militant formations across the desert floor. And you do not just see one type of plane, you are looking at the entire evolution of modern warfare. Entire squadrons of A-10 Warthogs, the legendary heavily armored tank killers, sit wingtip to wingtip with massive C-5 Galaxy transport planes that are literally longer than a football field. There are agile F-16 Fighting Falcons, endless rows of Black Hawk helicopters, and even the hollowed-out titanium shells of decommissioned intercontinental ballistic missiles. It is the largest single collection of aerospace power on the planet. But it is completely, utterly silent. There are no roaring engines. There is no air traffic. There is only the blistering heat and the soft whistle of the desert wind blowing through miles of rusting fuselages. Why would the most powerful military on Earth simply walk away, leaving its deadliest weapons to mummify in the sand? Why do they refuse to sell this multi-billion-dollar armada, yet refuse to let it rot? And most mysteriously of all, why is this dead graveyard heavily guarded around the clock, remaining a prime target for international spies willing to risk their lives for a single piece of scrap metal? Today, we are looking at the largest aerospace graveyard in the world. This is the story of the Davis-Monthan Boneyard, a place where the military buries its ghosts in plain sight, where dead planes give up their organs so others can live, and where the United States government was forced to violently shred its own legendary fighter jets to keep them out of the hands of its greatest enemies. To understand why the military abandons billions of dollars of hardware in the middle of nowhere, you have to understand the hostility of the environment. The Sonoran Desert is an unforgiving place. The summer sun beats down with a violent intensity, baking the earth and pushing temperatures well over 100 degrees. For a human being, it is a wasteland. But for a machine built of aluminum, titanium, and steel, it is paradise. When the Second World War ended, the United States found itself with a massive problem. They had produced tens of thousands of aircraft to defeat the Axis powers. Now, peace had broken out, and keeping thousands of planes actively maintained on tarmacs across the globe was bleeding the defense budget dry. They couldn't just throw them away. Another war could start tomorrow, but they couldn't afford to build colossal, climate-controlled warehouses to protect them from rain and snow. They needed a freezer, but instead of ice, they used dirt. They chose the Davis-Monthan Air Force Base in Tucson, Arizona, for two highly specific geographical reasons. First, the humidity here hovers near zero. In a climate without moisture, rust simply cannot exist. A bare piece of steel can sit in the Arizona sun for decades and look exactly the same as the day it was forged. But the second reason lies beneath the tires. If you park a heavy bomber, a machine that weighs nearly 200,000 pounds empty, on normal dirt, it will slowly sink into the earth until its underbelly rests in the mud. Paving thousands of acres of concrete would have cost billions. But the Tucson desert is cursed with a geological anomaly known as caliche. It is a naturally occurring subsoil layer of calcium carbonate that is as hard and unforgiving as poured concrete. The military realized they did not need to pave a thing. The earth itself was a natural parking lot. They began flying the planes into the desert, shutting off the engines, and leaving them on the dirt. Today, the facility spans over 2,600 acres of harsh alkaline soil, but to the men and women who work there, it will always just be the boneyard. But you cannot simply park a highly advanced, multi-million-dollar fighter jet in the desert, toss the keys, and walk away. While the dry air prevents rust, the relentless Arizona sun and the abrasive blowing sand will destroy sensitive avionics, melt rubber, and crack plexiglass canopies in a matter of weeks. These planes are not being thrown in a landfill. They are being ritually embalmed. When an aircraft arrives at the boneyard for long-term storage, it goes through a fascinating, almost surgical mummification process. First, the weapon systems and classified hardware are stripped out. Ejection seat explosives, highly volatile charges designed to blast a pilot out of a dying plane, are carefully disarmed and removed. Then, the plane is washed. Not just rinsed, but meticulously scrubbed. Many of these aircraft have spent years stationed on aircraft carriers in the middle of the Pacific Ocean. Their skin is coated in a microscopic layer of highly corrosive oceanic salt. If left alone, that salt would slowly eat through the aluminum like an acid. Once the skin is clean, the true embalming begins. The mechanics drain the lifeblood of the machine. Every drop of jet fuel is pumped out of the massive tanks. But an empty fuel system will dry rot and crack. So they pump in a specialized, lightweight preservative oil known as Type 1010. They run the engines just long enough for this oil to coat the inside of every single valve, pipe, and reservoir. Then they drain the oil back out, leaving behind a permanent, protective film that prevents the internal organs of the plane from deteriorating. But the most striking part of the ritual happens on the outside. If you look closely at aerial photos of the boneyard, you'll notice something eerie. The planes look blind. Every single cockpit canopy, engine intake, and exhaust nozzle is covered in a bizarre, thick white material. This is spraylat. It is a highly specialized, liquid vinyl compound. Mechanics spray it directly over the glass and open crevices of the plane in two distinct layers. The first layer is jet black, designed to completely seal out the abrasive desert dust. The second layer is stark white, designed to reflect the brutal thermal radiation of the sun. Inside a sealed cockpit in the Arizona summer, temperatures can easily reach 200 degrees Fahrenheit, hot enough to literally melt the instrument panels and permanently warp the electronics. But beneath the ghostly white shell of the spraylat, the interior of the plane is kept naturally cool, preserved in a state of suspended animation. Some planes have been sleeping under this white vinyl mask for over half a century, completely frozen in time. To the untrained eye, the boneyard looks like an elephant graveyard, a place where old titans go to die. But within the military infrastructure, AMARG is considered a vital, active supply chain. It is the largest and most lucrative organ bank in the world. These planes are divided into strict categories. Category 1000 aircraft are the untouchables. These are planes that are kept intact and ready to be resurrected. If a major global conflict breaks out tomorrow, these machines can have their spraylat peeled off, their engines fueled, and be back in the air delivering payloads within a matter of days. They are a doomsday insurance policy. Category 2000, however, is the butcher's yard. Because the United States operates aircraft for decades, the original manufacturers eventually stopped making spare parts. The only place on Earth to find a specific landing gear strut for a Vietnam-era F-4 Phantom or a replacement rotor blade for a CH-53 Sea Stallion helicopter is right here in the desert dirt. When an active duty plane at a base in Germany or Japan breaks down, the mechanics at AMARG are deployed like surgeons. They cut into the mummified planes, harvest the requested organ, and ship it across the world. For every dollar the government spends operating the boneyard, it generates roughly $11 in saved manufacturing costs. The dead are literally keeping the living in the sky. But some planes face a much more dramatic fate. Before modern jets arrived, this same dirt held the iconic B-29 super fortresses that fought in World War II. and the monstrous six-engine B-36 peacemakers that deterred the Soviet Union in the 1950s. But when the Cold War ended, the United States and the Soviet Union signed the Strategic Arms Reduction Treaty. America had to prove to the Russians that it was genuinely destroying its fleet of nuclear-capable B-52 Stratofortress bombers. The Russians did not want paperwork. They wanted visual proof. So the U.S. military dragged more than 300 of these massive B-52s into the Tucson dirt. They built a custom, terrifying piece of equipment, a massive steel guillotine blade hoisted by a heavy crane. The crane operator would position the blade over the thickest part of the bomber's fuselage and drop it. The colossal blade violently chopped the multi-million-dollar bombers into 3 distinct pieces, severing the wings and crushing the cockpits. They did not clean up the mess. They left the shattered corpses exactly where they fell. They left them lying in the dirt for 90 days, specifically so Soviet spy satellites orbiting high above could photograph the carnage and confirm the destruction. Once the Kremlin was satisfied that the American Titans were truly dead, the scraps were finally sold to be melted down into soda cans and razor blades. But the most intense and secretive area of the boneyard does not involve Russian satellites. It involves a plane you know very well, and a geopolitical nightmare that forced the United States to destroy its own legacy. The Grumman F-14 Tomcat is arguably the most famous fighter jet in history. With its iconic sweeping wings and twin engines, it was the absolute star of the 1986 film Top Gun. It was a masterpiece of naval aviation, capable of flying at Mach 2 and tracking 24 enemy targets simultaneously. In the 1970s, the United States was deeply allied with the Shah of Iran. The Shah wanted the best Air Force money could buy, and the United States eagerly sold him a massive fleet of brand-new ultra-lethal F-14 Tomcats. But in 1979, the Iranian Revolution exploded. The Shah was overthrown, and the new fundamentalist regime took power. Almost overnight, Iran transformed from a close American ally into a bitter enemy. The new regime still held the keys to a massive fleet of America's deadliest fighter jets. For decades, the Iranian Air Force kept those Tomcats flying, using them with devastating effectiveness in the Iran-Iraq War. But flying a supersonic fighter jet requires a constant stream of replacement parts. Engines burn out, hydraulics fail, radar systems fry. Because the United States completely embargoed Iran, they had no legal way to buy replacement parts, so they turned to the black market. By the early 2000s, Iranian spies and front companies were infiltrating the global aerospace market, desperately trying to bribe officials and steal F-14 parts to keep their aging fleet in the air. Their primary target was the United States itself. When the United States Navy finally retired the legendary F-14 Tomcat in 2006, they sent the entire surviving fleet to the Davis-Monthan boneyard. Federal agents soon realized that the boneyard was becoming a target. Unscrupulous scrap metal dealers and black market smugglers were attempting to infiltrate the supply chain, trying to purchase scrap Tomcat parts in Tucson to quietly smuggle them to Tehran. The Pentagon panicked. The risk was simply too great. The United States government made a heartbreaking, unprecedented decision. Rather than storing the F-14s for museum displays or preserving them for future generations, the order was given to completely eradicate them. The mechanics at the boneyard did not just dismantle the F-14s, they deployed industrial shredders. They fed the iconic, multi-million-dollar fighter jets into massive mechanical jaws, violently tearing the titanium and aluminum into microscopic, unrecognizable shards of scrap. They obliterated their own legendary aircraft to guarantee that not a single bolt, wire, or microchip could ever be smuggled across the ocean to keep an enemy fighter in the sky. Today, the security surrounding the remaining high-value aircraft at AMARG is absolute. It is a fully locked-down military installation, patrolled by armed military police and constantly monitored by motion sensors. It is a graveyard, yes, but it is a graveyard filled with dangerous secrets. The Davis-Monthan Boneyard is much more than a junkyard. It is the ultimate time capsule of human ambition and the brutal cost of global dominance. It stands as a silent monument to the brilliant engineers who built these machines, the pilots who risked their lives to fly them, and the fleeting nature of cutting-edge technology. In the end, no matter how much money we spend or how fast we fly, everything eventually returns to the dust. If you were given clearance to walk through the miles of silent, sleeping giants in the Arizona desert, which historic aircraft would you want to stand beneath and see up close? Let us know your favorite plane in the comments below. We read every single one. If you want to keep uncovering the lost and abandoned history of our world, hit the subscribe button and join us next time. Stay safe, and thanks for watching.